All right, I've got 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Office of Professional Services and Human Capital Categories, also known as PSHC. Spotlight webinar. My name is Carla Kawar, and I am a program specialist within the PSHC portfolio. Today's topic is category management cost avoidance with Erica Overvie. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, today's presentation has already been linked in the chat box. However, if you have difficulty downloading it, you may direct message my co-host, Tim Balzer, and he can help you with that download. If that still doesn't work, you can email us at cam@gsa.gov, that's CAM@gsa.gov, and we'll send over a copy to you. We ask that you remain on mute during the entirety of today's presentation. We ask that you use the chat box to ask questions. However, we kindly ask that you only use the chat box for questions regarding today's topic. We will do our best to answer questions throughout the presentation, but certainly at the end as well, we'll have some time for Q&As. We are capturing attendance on our end through Zoom, so CLPs will automatically be sent out to everybody who's attended today's webinar, and there's nothing that you need to do on your end. If you don't receive a certificate within about 10 business days, you can email us at that same email address, cam@gsa.gov, and we'll send over a copy to you. Finally, a post-event survey will be emailed out to everyone on today's call. We ask that you take a few minutes to fill that out. It would really help us improve the future of the Spotlight webinars. Today's speaker is Erica Overvie. Erica currently serves as a government-wide professional service category program manager. In her role, she is focused on supporting agencies in strengthening their category management efforts and their use of government-wide contracts. She also plays a large role as a program manager and co-facilitator in the Civilian Services Acquisition Workshops program, better known as the CSAW program. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Erica.
All right, thank you, Carla. As Carla said, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to my fellow West Coasters, and thank you for joining us today. I just checked out the attendee list and I recognize a couple of agency category management partners, but there are also many new names. I'm very happy to have you with us. But if you are a category management POC in your agency, at the end of the presentation, I have my email address and I encourage you to reach out to me so we can collaborate. For today, we are discussing cost avoidance, which is one of the fundamental pillars of category management. So I'm happy to have you all here. So let's dive right in. As you can see here, cost avoidance demonstrates the extent to which a program is delivering increased value for the goods and services acquired by agencies measured in dollars. Cost avoidance is the effort to get more out of our budgets. This list below comes from the link here to the category management key performance indicators, or KPIs, their definitions, and a guidance page. It lists the different cost avoidance methodologies that are used in procurement. The first methodology is previous prices paid. This means that you are deriving the cost avoidance total by comparing how much was paid for a certain product previously to how much is being spent now. For example, if last year I paid $10 and this year I paid $9, then I have $1 in cost avoidance. The next one, average prices paid, is similar, but this time one is considering how much on average is the price you are going to pay and how that compares to the rate on another contract. Next is average rate of cost avoidance. This considers how much overall the vehicle is avoiding and applying it across the board. Discounted contract rates has a lovely little red arrow next to it because it's a methodology that we use in the professional services category, which is where I am seated. Our Identity Protection Services SIN uses this methodology, which means that we are at the contract level have negotiated discounts that are available, along with further discounts at the order level. We will be talking about this further in today's presentation. Next is external benchmarking, which is looking at the industry established price you would pay minus the price you will actually pay. Then we have administrative cost avoidance. This looks at the amount of people and process time saved with one vehicle versus another. We'll be discussing this much more in depth today, as a professional services category uses this for both our multiple award schedule and our best-in-class OASIS contract vehicles. Last but not least is refunds. The cost avoidance methodology. This cost avoidance methodology is calculated by the refund total or cash back total that an agency gets back when they use their travel card or fleet card. Our GSA Smart Pay program uses this methodology, so we will be discussing it further in this presentation as well. All right. So the category management framework is very invested in tracking cost avoidance. As a program, the federal government tracks several category management key performance indicators, and cost avoidance is one of those. When we reduce cost avoidance, we leverage administrative efficiencies, we free up existing resources to focus on mission critical work and a better partnership with program offices, and we use the time and partnership to focus on better requirements and performance measures, adding value to the process. This grid lists the KPIs that category management is currently tracking. First is the cost avoidance KPI in general, which is obviously what we are talking about today. Next is the spend under management KPI, or SUM. Cost avoidance is impacted by SUM because the more spend that moves into spend under management, the higher the cost avoidance that is achieved. Small business utilization, our third one, offers better cost avoidance because this offers opportunities for better pricing from small businesses based on their overhead structures. This is how the KPI is tracking for all of the years. The green lines, the small little green lines, are the targets for the year, and the big green bar indicates the total category amount achieved. From the total on the left, you can see that we still have a ways to go for this year. The dashboard that houses this data and the other KPIs is called the Category Management Executive Summary Dashboard, and I've included the link to the dashboard on the slide in the top right corner. This dashboard includes how the KPIs are shaping up for all 10 government-wide categories. Currently, agency cost avoidance data is not tracked in this dashboard, but I have been told that the Category Management PMO will be making this available soon. So I think that's very exciting news. And if you're on this call, you probably think so too. All right. We are also tracking cost avoidance at the contract vehicle level. This dashboard came from the Solutions Profile Report, which we have linked in the top right corner. Here you can see a significant amount of cost avoidance achieved by the GSA Smart Pay program, and that's based on the refunds that we mentioned earlier. IPS has recently changed their pricing structure, which has allowed for significant cost avoidance to be tracked as well. Finally, at the bottom of the bar structure is a bold line. This is the administrative cost avoidance achieved by OASIS and OASIS Small Business. All right. So what goes into tracking category performance? All spend under management vehicles track their cost avoidance. For professional services, this means that we look at the GSA Smart Pay program, the Identity Protection Services SIN, and the OASIS contracts, as well as agency-based Tier 1 contracts throughout the government. For GSA Smart Pay, the cost avoidance structure is rather familiar to most of us. Basically, everybody has a credit card, and credit cards usually come with some sort of benefit like travel miles, rewards, or a cashback bonus. The GSA Smart Pay program works the same way. It utilizes the same refund methodology, but for the government. So government agencies generate an enormous amount of spend, about $30 billion plus of credit card spending. And so GSA negotiated with a couple of banks to run this program. As agencies use their purchase, travel, or fleet cards, they generate a percentage of cash back from these banks, just like you would with your personal card. Last year, the amount of cash back that agencies received was about $390 million. In this grid, you can see that the refund cost avoidance has been increasing over the years. The three colors that you see indicate the transition from Smart Pay 1, then Smart Pay 2, and now Smart Pay 3. Here we have the Identity Protection Services SIN, or IPS. I always get a kick out of working with this best-in-class vehicle because it was put together as a result of the OPM identity breach in 2015. I was actually onboarding into the federal government right as this happened and had my PIV credentialing frozen in the process. And this is how people like me are getting their identity protection services today from the federal government following that situation. What you see at the top is a screenshot from GSA eLibrary, and it references the 3 vendors that are available on the contract. The arrow points to where you can see the contractor terms and conditions and price list. What we have in the bottom section is just an extract of what is included in those price lists. We have a couple ways that you can buy these services, such as by enrolled individuals or by total impacted individuals. Those are 2 very different numbers, so they're going to have very different pricing. But what we can see here is that the more people who are enrolled or the more people who are impacted, the more the price goes down. Therefore, the IPS cost avoidance methodology follows a volume-based discount approach for its customers, at which point we take the contract price minus the individual task order price, and that gives us the total cost avoidance achieved by using IPS. Last but not least, we have administrative cost avoidance. This methodology is significant to our category because we deal so much in services rather than products. The professional services category uses this methodology to track cost avoidance for OASIS, HCATS, and the multiple award schedule. I want to use the next part of the presentation to talk a bit about how we develop the administrative cost avoidance strategy for our category because it's such a nuanced approach. So what other people are saying about administrative cost avoidance. Gartner, who offers a category management strategy bootcamp, says it's really hard to quantify price savings in services that all have unique requirements. So you have to look to savings in the process. And since we as a category have held so many industry partner exchanges, we were able to capture one industry partner mentioning at an event that you have to let the competition drive the price for that specific requirement at that point in time, not lower prices and take the quality out of the delivery. There is so much room for efficiencies in the process. That would be a good place to start. We took this feedback and thought about how administrative cost avoidance could apply to some of our larger contract vehicles. We also looked to policy guidance along the way, reviewing memos from over the years starting in 2008. You can see that this memo in the left corner highlighted agencies and charged them with determining the value of using government-wide vehicles. The next memo in 2011, we moved on to highlighting unnecessary administrative costs and potential for administrative savings. In 2014, we had the start of category management memo, which noted increased proposal preparation costs and administrative expenses, which lowers an agency's potential savings. All of this is pointing to the process of placing an order and the cost avoidance that could be achieved there. The most recent guidance calls out that the lack of mechanisms to support agency collaboration on common contract solutions has resulted in billions of dollars in lost cost avoidance. This speaks directly to why this topic today is so important. Our job is to develop methodologies to increase cost avoidance and then to measure our impact. All right, so we had to start somewhere. We took existing studies and pieced them together to start understanding what administrative cost avoidance could look like. In the top left is where we looked at the time it takes to place an order on OASIS versus going through an open market procurement. In the bottom, we looked at a study from Censeo Consulting, and they had a little different approach in which they calculated administrative lead time as well as direct hours. In the bottom is another study from ASI Consulting, which looked at total cost per transaction and estimated at low, expected, and high costs. So we were able to compare different procurement approaches. When we put all that together, we averaged the 3 studies, and we found that you would save about $12,000 by placing an order on a vehicle like OASIS versus going open market. We took this number and we shot it to our agency members at our categories interagency group. They responded that they thought this total was actually probably too low. So either way, we were certainly not overestimating the administrative cost avoidance. To summarize this slide, basically, when we were trying to figure out how to calculate our administrative cost avoidance, we looked at a bunch of data, and then we did a bunch of analysis. We showed it to a bunch of people. They said we were close. Main takeaway is we did not just pull these numbers out of a hat. So our next step was that we had an independent reviewer take a look at our approach. After they did, they gave us a confidence score of yellow, which indicates some degree of confidence, but provided a lot of feedback on how we could further refine our approach and our calculation methodology. So our revised methodology calculation overview. We took a step back and tried to look at incorporating a multi-rate approach. This approach showed us that the dollar size of an order does have some impact on the administrative lead time and the administrative burden of procuring that order. Taking a multi-rate approach has lots of positives. It's most accurate in terms of rate per order. It has close alignment with supporting studies. It's flexible to respond to increase in simplified acquisition thresholds, which in the case of this study was 150,000, and it improves over the 150,000 rate from the initial method. But it also presents some cons and some risks, such as increased complexity to calculate it. It continues to rely on existing related studies, and it is still an approach that is very conservative, potentially allowing true cost avoidance to be understated. So how does all the math work out? We took a look at order levels of the multiple award schedule, or at the time of this study, PSS, to start to understand what the reasonable thresholds should be. We saw a lot of transactions in the smaller dollar range, followed by a little bit more as we go up to the next, a little bit fewer as we go up to the next two groupings. And then we really see it start to drop off when we hit the 5 million plus range. We wanted to make sure that the distribution was reasonable over the years and not just in this study period. And so the second chart on the right indicates that what we found was actually pretty consistent over from year to year. So what did we see when we applied actual transaction data to the studies that we referenced? The GSA analysis considered information from 27 different agencies and bureaus. While this study is about 10 years old, not really much has changed in procurement administration lead time. So we can take the differences in these lead times and apply them to the actual data we have available to see what the savings would be. For low dollar orders, we can calculate savings just as we can for low, mid, and high dollar orders, and all based on the specific study, not overall thresholds. This analysis came to an overall calculation of $80 million in savings. The next study was the Censeo analysis. We looked at, we used the thresholds identified within the GSA study to calculate what the savings would be at the low dollar, low mid dollar, high mid dollar, and the high dollar purchases. In this study, the highest dollar was over $10 million, which is a much higher threshold, and therefore we are going to get some different results. Using this approach, which was the most different, the savings was $32 million. The next study was the ASI analysis. This also relies on the thresholds that we identified, with highest threshold being between 5 and 10 million plus. When you calculate the savings using this study, you got about $150 million. All right, when you take all three of those studies and you average them, you end up with $87 million in cost avoidance in people and processing time with the schedules program versus going full and open competition. A couple things to note here. The combined rates for greater then 150,000 in this approach is less than the split rate due to level of precision. Next, the complexity of the rates highlights the strengths and weaknesses of each analysis. And finally, trends in the rate calculations are not correlated. So there were several recommendations that came from the study. We walked away with all these and we implemented all of them as well. Since the studies, we have implemented the multi-rate calculations on OASIS, IPS, and the HCATS program as well as our Tier 2 multiple award schedules. The first recommendation was based on the information available in the existing studies. The multi-rate calculation appears to represent a sensible and supportable approach to begin applying administrative savings rates to all new orders under the professional services schedule. Like I said, we have followed this and we applied the multi-rate to a lot of our contracts. The second recommendation, the options presented represent a step forward in our understanding of administrative cost avoidance, but should result in the commission of a study for the specific purpose of determining the best approach and rate government-wide. The second recommendation was followed with the commission of a study. A couple of slides ago, there was after we presented it to the interagency team, then we had a study, an outside consultant check out what we did. We got the yellow score. That was a direct result of this recommendation, and it influenced the decision to move forward with the multi-rate approach. The third recommendation was to establish a process for reviewing and accepting cost avoidance rates for additional vehicles beyond those designated as best in class, or where a category initiative was approved by the CMLC, the Category Management Leadership Council, to implement such a rate. We have done this one as well. We have done the third recommendation and have implemented this approach of the multi-rate calculation with the MASS program, the Multiple Award Schedule program, which is a Tier 2 solution. So we have implemented the multi-rate approach across the board with Tier 2 and Tier 3. So looking for continued refinement. So just because we have implemented all of the recommendations that we immediately had from the study does not mean that we are done. We are always looking for continued refinement. FPDS is now required to provide date ranges, which is a new data source for considering procurement acquisition lead times, or PALT, for every procurement in FY20 and beyond. And PALT is a significant factor when we're tracking our administrative cost savings. So having this available for us is significant. This is now required to be populated, and so now we can calculate the PALT by utilizing the date signed, which is required, minus the solicitation date, and can quickly learn PALTs for all of our acquisitions. In this example, the lead time was about 5 months. Another opportunity for refinement is understanding better and quantifying what happens before the solicitation date. So the solicitation date in our FPDS data is the earliest date that we have, but that's not when a solicitation really begins. There's the market research that's involved, there's the requirements discovery and everything. So capturing the time that is saved by going with a government-wide contract, all that time that is saved prior to when PALT starts calculating, is difficult for us to capture and quantify and use that in our analysis as well. Finally, we checked out all the data and we were able to find more trends and identify more opportunities, slicing the data this way and that way. And we noticed that across the board, placing an order with a government-wide contract is faster. But we noticed that PALT and the administrative cost savings and everything, the biggest changes in lead time actually were influenced the most by the individual agency. So what this means is that we could spend some time honing in on best practices at the agency level And we can use what we find there for improving cost avoidance for the whole government. These trends about agency-specific lead times have been noticed even at sub-agency levels. So there's much more to the story here. And continued refinement, continued research, asking the right questions with agencies could include understanding these differences better, and what is the difference between each agency's approach and its strategy, and how is that impacting pulse so drastically. Finally, obviously, we're not just, if we do get that data, we're not just going to sit on it. So we would want to communicate that out with best practices, as well as pitfalls to avoid, and share that with the category management, program management office, the PMO, and our agency partners, and all of you in attendance today. So last but not least, we're always looking for continued refinement. So as always, do you have any studies, analysis, or data that you would like to contribute to our body of knowledge? This could be your opportunity to contribute to our understanding of the agency halt times like I was just talking about, as well as cost avoidance in general. So in the meantime, let's increase spend under management so that we can decrease duplicative costs and increase the government's cost avoidance and get more for the taxpayer dollar. Once again, I've provided you the link to the executive summary dashboard, which includes tons of data about all the KPIs as well as cost avoidance. So we kind of breezed through the beginning of the presentation and giving you more time to ask questions if you have any. Very interested in the and how everybody's agencies are tracking this. I'm very excited to see the PMOs about to put agency-specific cost avoidance numbers up on the dashboards, all exciting stuff. But I would like to open up the floor for questions now. If anyone has any ideas they'd like to share about tracking cost avoidance, that's also more than welcome. And if you are too shy to come off of mute and ask your question, the chat is open, but also I have included my email address in the slide. So please feel free to reach out to me, ask any questions you might have about category management and why cost avoidance is so important to you, and when you're deciding to go with a government-wide vehicle versus open market. And we would love to collaborate with you as well.
All right, Erica, I'm not seeing any questions on my end of the chat, but sometimes they come directly to you. Do you have anything on your end?
I'm not seeing anything pop up.
Okay, well, keep it open for a few more minutes, but thank you so much, Erica. I thought that was short, sweet, and certainly very educational. And thank you all for joining today's webinar. We'll still stick around for a few more minutes should you have any questions, but I did drop a link to an upcoming office hours series where we will be hosting a webinar on selecting the right labor categories on the GSA schedules. And that's going to be on June 9th, same time, same place. The registration link is there, and we'll stay open for about 5 more minutes should anyone have any questions. And again, if you join a little bit later, just know that CLPs will automatically be emailed out to you, and there's nothing that you need to do on your end to get those. So give us about 10 business days to send those out to everybody. All right, well, I'm still not seeing any questions, so I think we can give everybody some time back today. Thank you again for hosting, Erica, and thank you all for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.